All right, welcome back to the shop. Day number 2 here. At the end of the last video, we concluded with gluing up the leaf, the dining table leaf torsion boxes. So here's one of them before before the plywood's trimmed down to size. Nice and light and very stiff. It's good. That's what we're after. And then I reconfigured the shop a little bit to move some things around. And then I also had to rip a whole bunch of strips of MDF to make a bunch of blocks. And so I need to cut all these blocks to a square shape. I ripped them all the width, gotta cross cut them all down to size. And those basically fill in the torsion box grid where I need to mount things. So most of them are gonna be used to run along the length where the table slide extensions have to go. Since after I get the torsion boxes glued up, it's kind of hard for me to tell what's top, bottom, left, or right. So when I laid out the design, I made it all symmetric. So whether I spin it side to side or flip it over, it doesn't matter. It's got all the same internal structure inside. Now it does make it a little bit heavier, but that kind of error proofs it, which is what I need when I can't see what's actually inside the box once it's glued up. So I'm gonna cut a bunch of these down, and then we're gonna glue up our next set of grid for the torsion box, and then get the 2 plywood pieces on it and put it in the vacuum bag, since that's probably the best method to get nice solid pressure on these. So yeah, here we go. Let's get to it. In the first video, I talked about using a torsion box for weight savings, and that really stems from a project I did a couple years ago for a sofa table where the base was really rigid, but the top was 1.5 inch solid ash, and it got really heavy, and it made it feel kind of almost wobbly, which I didn't like. And so even though a dining room table has a lot bigger footprint, I still want to minimize that, and so I'm trying to cut weight out where I can for the top. And my solution here was a torsion box. Now, this is a lot more work to make a torsion box. If I would have done something simple and just laminated 2 pieces of 3/4 inch MDF together, that would have been a lot faster, but would have resulted in a heavier top. If I would have used standard MDF, that would have been about a 60-pound top. Just for one of these halves I'm gluing up here would have been 60 pounds, where this, once it gets out of the vacuum bag, only weighed 35 pounds. Now, if I would have found and utilized ultralight MDF, I could have actually come in close there. I would have come in about 40 pounds for that one tabletop piece. So at 1.5 inch, there's moderate weight savings doing a torsion box. It would have been even greater if I wouldn't have had to put all that solid blocking in there for the extension hardware. You can kind of see that in the small torsion box, right? It's 10 pounds for the small one. It would have been 20 pounds for standard MDF, and then 13 pounds for ultralight MDF. So far, I'm pretty happy with what they weigh. I think that's going to make for a very stiff and rigid table. And not only is it for the finished product, it's also for me in the shop, flipping it over to sand it, flip it over to add finish, flip it over to veneer it. All that is helpful and minimize the risk of maybe dropping it or letting it fall due to its weight. All right, so working through the leg laminations and ran into a couple problems. One being just design. So here's my plan, which you'll see on the time-lapse video as well, is that I was planning to add 2 layers at a time, then flush up those new layers to what would be like a template piece. So this bottom was my template. I'd add 2 layers, go to the router table, flush trim them to the template, and then add a couple more layers, go back to the router table, flush them up. So the 2 issues. One, my flush trim bit wasn't exactly flush trim. It's like it leaves the tiniest amount of material. And so that causes a bunch of cumulative error. And so what I end up with is you know, basically a 16th inch, I don't know if you can be able to see that, but I put about a 16-inch difference from top to bottom. That's not gonna work. So, oh, and the second error I made is more in design side. I removed this middle material just from a weight and material standpoint, but it also removed the reference for my bearing. So I couldn't have actually completed all my flush trim cuts even if the tooling was working well for me. So I need to find some alternatives to cut this out. That has brought me to either the bandsaw or the table saw. And I'm leaning towards the table saw. Couple reasons. One, my stop block for the length measurement was already set up. So I just had to add kind of a 1/2 inch piece of MDF in its place so I could bump that up against my template material. And then I will then rip it to width as well in the table saw. But of course, the blade's not tall enough, so for every cut, I'll have to cut one side, flip it, cut the other side to get through the full thickness. So that's my plan. We're gonna fix some issues here, fix some errors. So let's get to it. Oh, and then after we're done cutting this all to size, I then will laminate on the outside pieces that will cover up this big void in the middle, because that does not make a very attractive leg. So here we go. All right, not a great explanation by me there. I did end up using the jointer to get one surface of all those cut edges flat, and then ran through my table saw on one side to cut halfway through the width of the leg, or the thickness of the leg, and then I flipped it over to cut through the remaining thickness of the leg before adding these kind of outer cap pieces. All right, we've got our leg lamination blank all put together here. Finished off a little cap on the very bottom where the sit on the ground. And then the next step is I'm concerned about the edges of legs, right? They get hit with dining room chairs, kids kick them, vacuum cleaners, mops, whatever. They get hit a lot. And so my concern with just having veneer on the corners is it might chip out, break, kind of dent into the MDF, and then you'd see just raw MDF underneath. So my plan, which is of course more labor intensive, is to actually cut small grooves out of each corner and the bottom corners and glue in solid walnut on all the edges. just to prevent them, like I said, from chip out, tear out, damage, whatever the case may be. So I've ripped a bunch of these strips down, and now we're going to cut the little grooves in the legs using the table saw. I've got the blade about a little less than 3/8 high and a little less than 3/8 from the fence to create that to remove that little piece of material. And yeah, then once we do that, we'll sand it flush, and we'll be ready to put some veneer on this thing, I think. So here we go. All right, so the legs are finally ready for veneer. Got the hardwood edging all added to all the edges and the bottom edges as well. One thing I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but the way I did this is to ensure there's no end grain sticking on the sides where the veneer is going to go, because glue doesn't stick all that well, or doesn't it gets pulled into the end grain and doesn't have a very durable bond. So try to minimize the end grain. It's just in the very bottom, which there won't be a veneer on the very bottom anyway. So we're all good there. So now that the legs are ready to go, I need to turn my attention back to the tabletop itself. I have one of the leaves sitting here. And so it has a pretty ugly edge on it. We have to add some hardwood to that. Before we can do that though, we do have to sort through the lumber I bought and get it milled and cut down to size before we can start laying it out. On the table leaves, no fancy joinery, just gonna be kind of just butt joints around the corners. On the table, or the halves of the tables that aren't the leaf, there will be a miter on the outside edge that you will see, but on the inside edge there'll just be a butt joint, making sure that the end grain is going to be where the two table halves slide together, won't be visible at the end product. So yeah, we've got some work to do. Let's start by getting the lumber out and getting it milled. Here we go. All right, so we're about to start cutting the perimeter pieces for the torsion boxes. Want to talk about my setup real quick here. First, got a big flat surface. I don't have any other work surface in my shop that is like roughly 44 by 44-ish to fit all this. So got some melamine set up on my centipede, which is plenty large. I've got the torsion box itself shimmed up off the melamine by about 3/16 eighth of an inch, and that gives me still a nice flat reference surface for all my perimeter pieces to sit on, but then still leaves material top and bottom that I can flush trim back after I glue it all together. I wanted to share some of the material and labor details. I purchased 3.5 sheets of 1/2 inch MDF. I've used pretty much all of that. I think I might have a 1/4 sheet left. And then I purchased 2 sheets of the 1/4 inch plywood. All of that has been consumed. And that was about $300 from a local big box store. There was also some hardboard included in that cost that I haven't used yet that I will later on in the project. And then as well, there's walnut that was purchased here. In total, I purchased $320 worth of walnut. I haven't used most of that yet. This is probably just a small percentage here for the perimeter pieces. Most of that gets consumed by the aprons. In terms of labor, I'm about 30 hours into this project thus far. I thought I'd be further along, but just like the example here, some mistakes get made. Things have to get redone. It also did take quite a bit longer to make the torsion boxes and the legs than I had initially thought. This is going to do it for the second video in this series. I appreciate all of you that have watched. If you want to make sure you catch the next videos, please subscribe. If you like the content, please hit the like button. And if you have any questions or any thoughts on how the process could be improved, please leave comments. Thanks, and have a good one.